Hi, in this video I'll be demonstrating the full capabilities of OrcMath. To do that, I'm going to go through the process of creating an exam review, which is going to require that I utilize all of the available settings. If you have never heard of OrcMath, this is also a really good intro to what OrcMath is all about. This video assumes you already have OrcMath downloaded and set up. If you need help doing that, you should watch my Getting Started tutorial. Before I start, I'd like to lay out my goals in advance. I have a unit exam coming up in my geometry class, and the topic is similarity and trigonometry. I'd like to make a review for my students that covers all of the exam topics, and I'd like to do it in a way that doesn't use too much paper, so I'm going to cram as much as I can onto each page. I'm thinking I'd also like to have the questions range in difficulty. It would be nice if they started out easy and the difficulty increased with each new question. So let's get started. I'm going to open OrcMath, and the first thing I'd like to do is check which modules are available. Since the questions are arranged by topic, I'm going to drop down the Geometry tab and look for what's under Similarity. I'm not seeing the Trig section because Trig is listed in the Functions tab. I can drop down that tab and check out what the trig questions are like, or let's suppose I didn't already know where they were listed. If I'm looking for something and I have trouble finding it, I can always use the search bar up above. Type a keyword, and there, that's what I had in mind. So I'm going to add all of those. One thing I did not find was altitudes of right triangles. I can do a search for that, but nothing appears to come up. Either I'm using the wrong words or the module doesn't exist. In this case, the latter is true. OrcMath has about 100 different modules, which, while impressive, is still not all-inclusive. More modules are added with every version, so hopefully an altitude of right triangles module will be released soon. Before I change any other settings, I just want to check out what I've got and visualize what might need to change. Without worrying about all the other fields, I'm just going to click Generate to see what happens. When the worksheet loads, I go straight to the answer section so I can see what kind of work is involved. In my case, everything you see here is what I had in mind, but in some cases you might find that the work behind the problem is more or less than what you need students to do. One thing I'm noticing is the worksheet takes up way too much space. Not only that, but right now there aren't enough questions. I'd like more than one of each type. Let's close the PDF and go back to OrcMath. The first thing I want to deal with is quantity. There are two ways I can increase the quantity. One obvious way is by editing the quantity column. I can do that, but when I view the worksheet, you can see that the questions are arranged in random order. I'd actually like to have complete control over the order of the questions. I'm going to return to OrcMath and undo what I just did. Then, to disable shuffling of questions, I'm going into the settings screen and unchecking the shuffle order box. This will preserve the order set in the table. Now I'll go back to the create screen. Instead of editing the quantity column, I'm going to add a copy of each question to the table. Every time I click, a new copy is added. With multiple copies of each question, I can now click and drag to fix the order. Now let's preview the worksheet again. Not surprisingly, the worksheet is now much longer. Occasionally errors appear in generated questions. If that happens, I usually just click Generate again, and it doesn't happen on the second time. The other thing I'm noticing is that all of these trig questions don't have instructions. That is great if I'm making a page of exercises that are all on the same topic, but for a mixed review, I feel like every question needs its own instructions. We'll go back to OrcMath to fix this. In the settings screen, you can see giving each question its own instructions is really simple. There is a checkbox just for that purpose. To condense the problems, I can do two things. The first is to reduce the vertical spacing between each problem. To do that, it is necessary to override the defaults. Setting the vertical spacing to 10 will make it very tight. Another way to fit more on a single page is to increase the number of columns. If you decide to do this, you need to be aware that not all questions work well with multiple columns. So let's just set 2 columns and see how it goes. Before I generate the next page, I'd like to change the title and the instructions that will appear on the top of the page. We'll call it Similarity and Trigonometry Review. And for the instructions, we'll say, these exercises cover many topics you will see on the exam. If you need help, you can find a detailed answer guide on the class website. Alright, we'll click generate and see what we get. The worksheet looks pretty good. I've got the heading and the instructions there. We look at the questions. Some of them are in 2 columns. There is an error in one of the questions, so I'll have to reload the worksheet to rid it of errors. And one last thing I wanted to take care of was the range and difficulty. I'd actually like the questions to start easier and get harder towards the end. So rather than do that manually, I'm going to go into the settings page and I'm going to set the difficulty setting to incremental, which means it's going to increase in a linear rate starting from 1 up to the limit that I specify. In this case, I'll specify 4, which is the maximum difficulty. In OrcMath, difficulty can mean any number of things depending on what question you're looking at. Sometimes it's just using larger numbers. Other times it's wording the question in such a way that deriving the equation that would be used to solve it is a little bit more trickier to come by. So with the similarity and the trig questions, I'm just going to set it to the incremental difficulty and accept whatever it is that I get. We'll hit generate one more time, and hopefully this time we won't get any glitches. I'll just check it out. And as I go through here, everything looks pretty good. So that's pretty much everything you can do with OrcMath right now, at least in its current version. I've shown you how to search for questions, arrange their order, condense the spacing in the page, set the difficulty, the instructions, and the heading. If there's anything else that you're interested in learning about how to use the program, you can find your answers on the FAQ on the OrcMath website, orcmath.com. And I hope you enjoy using the program. I hope you find that it's powerful and it helps your students as well.